A virtual reality game that was released in 2043 quickly became popular all over the world. A guy immediately grabbed his headgear and logged into the game. He moved quickly and was soon standing in the library. Chess, who was introduced as person number 13 by the cat, approached him to say hello. Setting up the character display was the first stage. He took the nickname of Ray. Ray received the early evolution stone from Chess. Depending on the level, it will develop into a variety of weapons to aid Ray in combat. He was curious about the plot of the game. Chess flared because there was no restriction in this game. Ray completed and immediately fell to the ground while standing at the center of the cosmos. Ray awoke on a breezy field, and everything seemed extremely real to him. Ray initially arrived in the capital. His first mission was to meet a man in the mountain. A girl suddenly struck him. She was too busy seeking for her sister, so she left her phone number for him and quickly departed. Lilia was her name. She was a deputy knight. Ray's level 5 task was to track down the girl. Ray headed over there to locate the guy first. When Ray arrived at the mountains, he noticed a bear playing with the children, which was the one Ray wanted to find. He introduced himself as Shu and gave Ray a tour of the neighborhood. Ray was perplexed by the assignment. Shu had never taken on a mission like this before. Lilia was so well known that she even had her own fan club. Shu proceeded through the assignment, reminding Ray that this reality was extremely real. There was a description for her sister Lilia's destination, written on the note's backside. It was a monster-filled wilderness, and in this game, deceased NPCs would not come back to life. Ray would fail if he did not act quickly on this task, and he would face the consequences. Ray and Shu completed the mission together. Ray had nothing as he was at level 0. Ray receives various items from Shu. Ray would be banned from the game for a whole day if he died while playing. Lilia set off on the quest as soon as she could to keep her sister safe from the monsters. Shu grabbed 6 barrels and dashed forth to kill them all. Lilia was very emotional. Shu first believed that simply safeguarding Lilia would complete the mission, but this was not over. The enormous centipede monster appeared. Since this was a level 5 mission, they had to escape from these things. Shu came forward to halt them, as a monster charged towards Ray. Lilia came to halt and requested that Ray take her sister to safety. Ray swiftly dragged her sister away. Ray was en route when he discovered why Milia came there. They were being chased by a monster. Milia received some restraining armor from Ray. He diverted the monster's attention so Milia could flee. The monster, however, shifted its focus on her and began to attack. Milia was still alive as a result of the armor. Ray asked the evolution stone to do something to defend him, if it actually had the power to do so. When the stone began to shine, the centipede scurried ahead. Nemesis, who claimed to have been birthed from Ray's soul, emerged as a stunning young girl. In response to Ray's summon, it transformed into a sword. Ray killed the centipede by slashing it with his sword. Being reunited with her sister made Lilia happy. She swore that she would return the favor. Shu pulled out the ground while still alive. The last mission was completed, but all that was received as payment was a ramberry fruit. Episode 2. They had discussed with a cap, but their positions were shoguns. The attempt to kill the toughest NPC was unsuccessful. Milia's original intention was to poison the ramberry fruit so she could give it to her sister, but the plan failed. The second strategy was unsuccessful as well. Shu, the bear, vanquished all the creatures by itself once more. The most peculiar thing that was a level 0 announcement suddenly appeared and said the assignment had been finished. They were strangely perturbed by the quiet beast king. Shu was the only one he was concerned about. Meanwhile, Shu and Ray were celebrating. A hunger board and a restroom demand were posted near the food preparation area. Shu reminded Ray to log out of the game because that was what the real world needed. Nemesis sneered as Ray rose to his feet. How was she supposed to eat if Ray quit the game? Ray scowled and vowed to sign back in immediately. Shu had consumed all of the meal by the time he returned, but Shu only needed to clap his hands and the food would be filled again. Ray inquired of Shu about Lilia. He appeared to be getting to know her. Shu claimed that Lilia was enraged. Previously, the Pharaonic Empire and his nation formally engaged in combat together, but his nation's military readiness was inadequate and weakened over time. Despite all of that, the nation's 3 top officials abstained. After departing, Ray expressed his thankfulness for Shu's actions. He currently needed to level up in order to join the kingdom's ranks. The following morning, Shu led Ray in the process of selecting equipment and subsequently a profession. Being a paladin was Ray's favorite thing. Shu described the procedures required to become paladins. The first two procedures were simple, but the final one required nominating a senior member of the knighthood. Ray instantly thought of Lilia. Lilia was promoted right away to the knighthood. Then Ray and Nemesis got to the farm level. They came across other players who weren't feeling well. As he stood in the distance, Ray used magic to heal them. After finishing his battle with the monsters, the child hurried to thank Ray. He identified himself as Rook, who had recently participated in the game the day before. Rook's evolution stone took on the shape of a beast. Her name was Babi, she said. A monster, but in the appearance of a female ghost. Rook invited them to go out for tea. They divided up and returned to the farm level. Ray dodged something that suddenly tried to strike him by using his sword. It was a monster-type evolution stone. From the appearance of it, the monster may be separated into a variety of various forms. Fighting this thing was beyond their means. Ray tried to escape, but was unsuccessful. For the next 24 hours, he couldn't sign in. When Ray returned the following day, he only discovered Nemesis unhappy and blaming herself for her weakness. Ray encouraged Nemesis that they could do it again. Nemesis was furious that she even vowed to get revenge on the offender. Presently outside was being pummeled by the other man. There was only one royal labyrinth that guy couldn't get in, so Ray would go in there. Nemesis demanded to go back, since she was terrified of the dark location. Ray obviously disagreed with that. While going, something suddenly arrived. Ray quickly parried the strike, but the mana bar took up the majority of his attention. He remained throughout the conflict. The other man approached Ray to apologize since he believed Ray was a monster. This person turned out to be the highest ranking official in the entire kingdom. He identified himself as Fragon. Ray's earlier hit left an impression on him. Episode 3. Fragon must have done this because all of the PK was absolutely gone. Rook believed they were to be somewhat right. Nevertheless, he couldn't keep up with the map of the kingdom since it was so large. A girl sat down next to them all of a sudden. What they had deduced previously was correct. In addition to Fragon, there were 4 other persons engaged in this case. In this kingdom, they were all among the top servers. Ray had to pay for her since he wanted to find out more information, but she wouldn't tell. Maria took out a movie ball, which contained the events that were occurring. The PK men were running after a youngster. He impacted the enormous armor. He was given the opportunity to live as long as he caused harm. That was difficult for him, of course. He passed away since his time had run out. The other man was overjoyed. The news of his disciple's death was announced abruptly. The 3 men in front of them likewise passed away in an instant. Fragon took a step forward, asking the other man to withdraw or die. He examined the current state of information. He volunteered to put his name to an armistice. He curved as he got closer, increased gravity, and delivered the killing blow. He was swiftly thrown into the air by Fragon before being brought back down. What a fantastic match! The East came next, and this woman was Pharaoh. She pulled the crew to eliminate the PKs because they had harmed her clan members. Lei came next, and she completely eliminated the PK by herself. She took whoever involved in this case for an undisclosed purpose. Last but not least, the North possessed a very skilled assassin. Night King personally brought the entire warship to demolish the woodland, yet he still managed to escape. Ray was really thrilled with this. If he could run, Ray would take him down. Ray then proceeded to see the forest. Everything was gone. The space portal appeared suddenly. Ray paused for a moment before entering as Nemesis raced into it. Chess was already there. He arrived to regenerate the forest. Everything there, of course, was real. This just served to quicken the pace. It revealed to Ray a few additional things. Those PKs might still sign in and engage in combat. Only those who were wanted by the kingdom received punishment. Together, they walked out. Ray was cautioned by Chess to be careful where he went, because it was improper for him to have faith in other people's hearts. To talk with Rook about the trip, Ray headed to the library. There was a long and hazardous road there. Rook and Ray talked about their own skills. Nemesis was solely concerned about the bosses in that region. Maria had already seated down at the table, when Ray paced back and forth. She also went there to inquire about being a companion. Ray desired to do an assignment on the same occasion over this long trip. He decided to follow the freight route, and Maria would be responsible for finding the way. The day before they were scheduled to leave, some merchants were delivering goods outside the outskirts when they were attacked by goblins. They hopped into a car and fled, since they couldn't afford to. The automobile suddenly exploded, and a giant monster appeared and swept them all away. Episode 4. Rook appeared with a rhino pushing the car for them. He was sent by the church on a mission to assist them, and they gave him something in return. Rook just had to subdue the beast since he possessed the ability to tame it. Nemesis saw a group of merchants being attacked by goblins. Rook and Ray made the decision to engage in combat. Rook let go of the rhino and swept them away. Ray pulled out a sword. Rook had already taken care of everything, so he had no time to take any action. Nemesis had the ability to mesmerize goblins into killing one another. In an instant, Ray was attacked. The area's boss had descended, and compared to the other goblins, it was considerably more powerful. When Ray approached it to strike it, the goblin released a poisonous mist that poisoned him. The rhino ran to help, but it could only withstand a single strike. Rook yanked it back hastily. This intoxicated condition was just too terrible. He was given a potion by Maria. Ray would be immune to any negative condition for 3 minutes as a result of this. Ray had to make most of the opportunity. He possessed the capacity to take harm and to deal twice as much in a counterattack. Ray had 3 minutes to gather damage. Ray was unable to retreat because another bird swooped in. To block its path, Rook and the demonic spirit took to the skies. Ray had to eliminate the goblin even more quickly. Ray raced forward and delivered a strong punch that knocked its head off. Yet it was still able to move, because its heart was in its stomach. It would not have died if the stomach had not been destroyed. The medication ceased to work, returning Ray to a poisonous condition. Ray had to cross this line. He could not give up. A notice board popped up out of nowhere. Nemesis developed naturally under this circumstance. She released a brand new talent called the Flag's Breeze, which might change Ray's bad circumstances. Instead of losing blood due to his frail state, he recovered continually. As a result, the strike's strength was insufficient to completely destroy the goblin's heart. He had one more opportunity to expend energy. Ray made an effort to cause significant harm. When the moment arose, he delivered a devastating strike. As Ray sped up, he noticed the goblin was striking him twice in quick succession. He couldn't help it. Ray successfully destroyed a bullet that was flying towards him. Ray was aware that the previous murderer had used the same bullet. Why did he lend a hand to him? Someone was watching the entire event. He was intrigued by what Ray demonstrated. He let him utilize his powers freely. After all, it was just a game. After assisting the merchant caravan, Ray and the others made their way inside the city. Nemesis wanted to go eat, but Ray kept bringing her to the guild. After destroying the goblin, he returned with a large sum of money. They argued, but Ray didn't care because getting the hellish gloves was the best prize for killing the goblin. Ray attempted it all from a distance, which caused him to strike in the wrong direction. A penguin introduced itself as Flo and said it had no idea how to get out of the hazardous situation. He gave Ray the medication bottle that would help him with his issues. He suddenly experienced a headache. Something had just happened. Something had just appeared. The animal ears were visible when Ray quickly glanced in the mirror. He swung his blade into Flo's neck and yelled aggressively for it to come out right away. Flo shuddered, vowed that it would vanish at night, and took off running. Episode 5. Ray departed. Then, when he met Maria, he told her everything. Ray was on his way to the guild when he noticed the beastly ears. Maria fleered. This was nothing to be ashamed of. Ray still came after being encouraged. It was accurate to say that nobody gave any attention to him. All Ray wanted was to avoid running into Rook there. As soon as he was done, Rook stood behind him. There was no need to explain because Rook could read minds and already understood the situation. Ray desired the stunning cloak that Rook had just bought. Ray picked out a suit. He observed several persons waiting in line to record gacha. However, Ray's recording was just average compared to Rook's unique items. When he opened it, there was a horse inside. Ray climbed up in an attempt to ride it, but failed. He couldn't ride a horse because his paladin branch was also a branch of the knights. After Ray exited the game, he looked things up online and discovered that learning would be quite expensive. He was heading to the arena, but his level wasn't good enough, so he had to go make some money. He spotted a female being held captive by a bunch of thugs, and was at a loss on what to do. Ray jumped to the rescue when someone spoke out first. That guy displayed his level, but they weren't frightened. Ray moved forward to defend the girl, and acknowledged that his strength had increased as a result of the gloves. The others fled after he hit the thug. The other man was cured by Ray. Hugo was his name when he made his introduction. No physical strength existed throughout his branch career, despite the branch level being very high. The other girl went back and pleaded with them to help save her brother. Right away, Ray concurred. He didn't want them to engage in excessive behavior either, A lolly showed up right after the other girl departed. She was Hugo's companion, Sio. Hugo immediately contacted Ray to request assistance in finding the missing kids. Hugo discovered a location that was uninhabited and called up a machine. The Frag Imperialist introduced himself. They were unable to enter since their fortifications were fortified. Hugo had plans for Ray. He was from another nation, so they couldn't bring the kids to terrify him if he assaulted them. To save the youngsters, one had to enter covertly at that precise moment. Hugo gave Ray a final reminder before departing. He was the one who had transformed Nemesis into a really unique living form. It indicated that Ray belonged to the group of gamers who believed that this world was real. He had to use extra caution. Hugo started the effort by diverting the captive's attention so Ray could enter. A group of children that looked like zombies approached, and he turned pale. They could no longer be rescued. Ray had to set them free. Ray thought of the world as the actual world, as Hugo had spoken, and his heart bled. In order to face what was ahead, he needed to be stronger. They had found Ray's crew. When the boss emerged, Hugo paused after finishing his assault on the other squad. He made himself known as the deputy leader and was quite powerful. Hugo debated whether to carry on attacking or to flee. Hugo, however, was no longer able to handle it when Ray noticed the boss feeding children. He blended his abilities with Sio's to produce a brand new, stronger robot entity. Hugo pledged to send him to hell with the use of this ability. Ray had located the kids in the meanwhile, who were still alive. Just as he reached out to touch them, they abruptly drew out knives and stabbed him. Episode 6. When the boss showed up, he had poisoned a knife and made sure Ray wouldn't be able to survive. He had been a zombie for so long that it would only take a few steps for him to pass out. All that was required was to murder the children. Ray sprang up and severed the boss's arm. The monster released potions, but Ray was adept at reversing. He was forced to flee since his weapon hindered rebirth. He assembled a few creatures and went in search of the Buffalo Demon to ask for assistance. He discovered his disciple's body after running up from the cellar. Hugo had already ruined him. This man showed no concern. Ray was able to make every effort despite him unleashing his greatest punch. Ray loved his human existence, despite his willingness to bargain. The opposite impact came to an end. Ray went back to a deadly state. Hugo brought him some medication. They observed his box, which Ray had little interest in. Together, they descended to the cellar to wake the youngsters up. The disciples arrived at this point and began rummaging through the box in separate groups. They all passed away instantly as they unintentionally touched the cursed item. That cursed thing combined to become a magnificent monster. They didn't wake the youngsters up until later that day. Hugo and Ray both doubted their chances of winning when they saw the monster in front of them. Nemesis discovered a girl who was still alive. The monster swung around to charge at her. Ray sprang to her aid right away. Hugo was requested to remove them on his behalf, so that he could be present to capture the monster. The monster instantly regenerated when Ray slashed at it. From the damage counter, Nemesis felt quite odd. Nemesis recognized the issue. The boss's body was used to construct this monster. This monster would be temporarily under the authority of that boss. Ray had taken all the damage when he struck earlier with his final stroke. Now all that remains was to wait for the chance to retaliate. As soon as Ray caught the monster, it abruptly shifted its assault path. It followed Hugo's car. Ray hurriedly followed it. He found that its head's top was a point of weakness. The monster's leg was cut off by Ray using his skill. Ray struck the final blow and the monster collapsed. He was knocked down cold at an unintended moment. Even when Nemesis gave him medication, he didn't awake. Nemesis rose to engage in combat on her own. Ray encountered a shadowy figure while he was unconscious. He rediscovered his own recollections. He attempted to save the girl at the moment by crossing the street, but he failed. Thanks to his brother's support, Ray felt considerably better after first feeling uneasy. Ray had to make a choice, and he decided to disregard the risk involved in rescuing lives. The dark shadow was impressed by him as a result. It gradually revealed itself to be a lovely dark-skinned female created from Nemesis-like evolutionary rocks. It would now walk beside Ray. Nemesis lost her ability to resist. Ray arrived to aid at this point because, despite the idea's extremely low possibility, they still wanted to try. Ray eventually succeeded and learned how to ride horses. Ray chose to continue living in this world. He would put an end to everything, no matter how intense it was. Hugo met up with his thugs once more. It turned out to be the penguin, Flo, who had traveled there with him to put an end to the conflict between the two empires.